Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Kipfer Bros podcast. I am your host, Titus Kipfer, joined by my two co-hosts, also Kipfers, Tim and Joe. How are you guys doing?
Hey,
Good.
doing just great.
Today is my
Joe,
birthday. I just turned 40,
what?
so yeah.
Are
Hey,
you
Are you
happy birthday,
serious?
Joe.
serious? I should know
No
that.
way.
Happy birthday.
Thanks.
How does 40
40.
feel? That's quite the
Awesome.
milestone. You just woke up feeling different, I assume.
Yeah. No, I feel good. I feel like I'm 20, honestly. So
Yeah, well,
Nice.
I have a book for you,
Epic.
Joe.
cool. What's it called?
Go until
Uh,
you're gone.
Something
hey,
like
that's
that.
interesting. That's interesting you say that, Tim. That's one of the books I was going to
Oh,
reference.
Nice. Well, we
nice.
can get to that later. So yeah,
It,
joining us also here today is Lyndon Risser. You heard him chiming in here a bit. Lyndon is a business coach and probably a bunch of other things. Can you give us just an introduction, what all you do, Lyndon?
yeah, sure. Good morning. I am just a 60-year-old that's having a good time because I'm loving what I'm doing. But yeah, for 35 years, I had an active business, generators, emergency service and sales company. And I started coaching 15 years ago as a hobby. I live in Pennsylvania, but I don't hunt, so I had to come up with something else that sounded creative. So I started a little business. I called it Eternal Business. It was a time in my life I really didn't have money to give, and so that's the way I raised money for ministry. So my tagline was, "It's none of your business." Um, I would coach business owners, and then I would charge them $300 an hour, and they would write a check out to a ministry that I was coaching. Used most of my ministries weren't well known, so I was coaching them how they could take care of their donors and how donors could be more engaged in the ministries they were involved in. So yeah, today I coach leaders. My little tagline is I inspire leaders to discover their creative purpose to make God smile. And I also host a leadership event that raises money for ministry. Um, Other than that, I'm a dad of 5 kids, and yeah, that's a good question, Titus. I don't always know what I'm doing.
No, that's great. So your first company, you said emergency services, something like that. What exactly
Well,
were?
that's kind of a loaded question. At 16, I started a goat dairy,
Mm,
and I milked 70 goats. Had a herd of about 150. Uh, as a side note, probably a bad Mennonite joke. I had 300 kids before I was married. Um, that's actually what got me into Lebanon. I grew up in Hagerstown, Maryland, and moved my goat dairy to a little dairy here in Lawn, and soon realized that you can't have two incomes on a goat herd. So I just walked away from that and started my journey in other businesses. I was in welding, the electrical, and then the electrical led to emergency power. So
nice. And the emergency, what did you call it? What business is that exactly?
it's a generator sales and service, emergency
Okay.
generators. Um,
Okay.
our client, we started out manufacturing generators. Soon grew the company to the point we could purchase cheaper than we could produce, and at that point, we started moving more toward a commercial business,
Mm,
hospitals, nursing homes, that type of thing. So
great.
Did that become Dynatech then?
yeah, that was Dynatech from its beginning. They also another thing that we had at the end of the company is we had a university. We trained technicians, so we basically trained our competitors' technicians. So that was an interesting way to close out the business.
Nice.
Did model what I believe in business, and we can talk more about that.
Okay. So you coach business owners, nonprofit leaders, individuals. So what are some principles of success that apply across the board, whether someone listening is a business owner or just an individual listening to this? Yeah, what are some principles for success that apply across the board?
Well, I can only give you my perspective. And I guess, after experiencing a lot of life and a lot of mistakes, I tell people I coach more from my mistakes than I do my successes. And if I can help you benefit from my mistakes so you don't have to repeat them, I feel like I can contribute to your success. I would say that, when you know where you're going, so will everyone else. And I think there's a lot of people that aren't clear where they're going. And so it starts, from my perspective, with understanding your created purpose. And I believe that when you steward your pain for other people's healing, you heal. And if you can steward your pain in business for other people's benefit, I think you start enjoying a level of life that a lot of people don't. Mark Twain, one of my favorite sayings is Mark Twain. He says, two most important times in your life is first when you're born and second when you figure out why. And I think that's um, when you figure out your why and you're willing to get really clear on that and share it with others, I think that's when things start really changing for you. So, one of my favorite Bible verses, Habakkuk 2, 2, and 3, and it goes like this. It says, write it on the wall, write it in a way that others, uh, you'll attract those that are running so that they will run with you and you'll get there faster. That's the LBR version, but you can check it out. I think that's really what leadership is about, is getting super clear about where you're going and invite other people to go with you.
Right.
You asked about principles. I'd say that, well, first I'll give you my definition of coaching. Um, I, I'm I help leaders create a decision making process to have better conversations with themselves so that they can have more meaningful conversations with others. So that's my definition of coaching, is helping people put a decision making process in place. And I think that you'll find that a lot of people don't have a real clear vision, mission, and value statement. And I think when they get really clear with that and can articulate it and write it on the wall, so other people can read it, I think it's pretty interesting who shows up to run with you. And a lot of people put real wordy vision and mission statements together. I think they should be very short, simple statements. Um, so when your values ground you, out of your values comes your vision and what you want to contribute to. It's what you see in the future. It's what you see yourself contributing to. And then your mission is what you're doing currently. And what you'll find is your values and your vision change very little from year to year. But what does change is your mission, especially when you become 40, you start thinking different. And when you become 50, you think even more different. And when you're 60, it gets really um, interesting. But a lot of people, I think another principle I would say is very few people plan well. And I believe in having a 10-year plan, because I think when you start, it becomes a decision-making process that if you can think 10 years out, you will unconsciously make decisions in light of where you want to be in 10 years. And this is what I can guarantee you. If you're willing to think 10 years out, you'll get there 3 to 5 years before you'd plan on your major decisions. And I would have illustrations of that. Another principle I believe is that the success of every organization and every relationship can be measured by two things. One is the conversations you're not having and the conversations you're having poorly. So I'll tell you my trade secret in coaching. It's pretty simple. I just go into an organization and I just ask them one question: what aren't you talking about? So the interesting part about that is a lot of people don't know what they're not talking about. And that's the role that I often find myself playing is helping them get clear on what that is. Our fulfillment in life is relationships. It's God, it's yourself, and it's others. And I'm not sure that I agree with that little Sunday school jingle about, you know, JOY, if you remember that. But I believe that God comes first. We have to have the right conversation with ourselves so we can have the right conversation with others. So I believe it, I'm a big stewardship fan. And I believe that it's the people in our life, the present, what we're currently experiencing, and then our pain. When we start stewarding those three aspects of our life, I think something very special comes out of that. Pain is a powerful motivator. Um, and another topic that's very dear to me in business is radical generosity. I believe generosity is an act of faith. Now, at some point, Titus, you should shut me down because I could keep on going with some of this stuff. So maybe I'll bring it back to you.
No, this is good. My takeaway is that I can put myself before others. So that's good to hear from Lyndon. Uh,
I'll just add one thing to that, Titus. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the law of first and second things,
mm,
but
was that the guy in the Middle Ages? Forget his name. Catholic thinker, or was
yeah,
he
well,
talked about ordered loves? Maybe that was a different guy.
so,
Go ahead.
we all understand faith and works, and what brings clarity between faith and works, which is always a big discussion, is that they're both equally important, but one does come first. And
Mm,
until we can see them as equally important, it can be we can get disillusioned by the fact of which one's most important. And in business, it's the same way. In business, we talk about net profit and culture, and they're the health score of the business. But which do you think comes first, net profit or culture?
probably culture.
Well, we would all like to think that because we all want to sound spiritual. But what actually happened, they're equally important. Okay. But there's one that comes first. How can you have a great culture if you don't have profit?
Generally, the culture starts kind of going downhill when money's tight. People
Right.
start bickering.
So a very profitable business can create an awesome culture. In church life, it's similar, um, which is most important, our love for each other, the Great Commission,
Yeah,
our
both.
love for each other. How could we deliver well on the Great Commission if we don't love each other?
Hmm.
In the Bible, there's the three commandments. So it's the Great Commandments, and which is two, love, love, it's the love commandment, and then it's also the Great Commission.
Hmm. Yeah, my comment was a bit tongue in cheek. I understand what you're saying, but it kind of messes up the JOY song, so I'm not sure what to teach my kids for bedtime now. But Tim, you had a comment or you had a question. You had your hand up there.
I think I lost my train of thought. I was gonna say earlier, just as you were talking through some of those principles like vision, like coming up with a plan, like conversations. So I would say probably a lot of our listeners are in the Anabaptist world, Mennonite world, and I think a lot of your coaching happens in that world as well. Correct me if I'm wrong, but have you found any particular challenges with this subculture or yeah, things you've noticed that business owners or people struggle with specifically in this subculture with those principles that you mentioned?
That's an interesting question, Tim. I think it's a human issue, a human nature issue. Um, I think a lot of people like to pin it on our culture. Um, I feel that the same biblical principles that work for one culture work for all. Um, I think if you were to pin one thing, maybe that because I do coach non Anabaptist people, but if you would think one thing that probably we are challenged with is probably honesty. And I think it's always kind to be honest. I think you need to do it biblically, which is the truth and love. But, there was times I probably said things to Joe that he didn't really make him happy. Um, but I think that's the reason why a coach serves their clients best if they are gut honest with each other and they have that level of trust. So, I think it's kind of in this order. Trust, a transparency and authenticity create trust. And the Pat Lencioni focus on, trust is foundational to relationship.
Mhm.
I think he's articulated that really well. So the level of culture that you have could be measured by trust, I believe. Um,
Mhm.
and, transparency breeds trust and trust breeds respect. And then we have
Mhm.
transparency and trust and respect. Then we have an unbelievable culture. And when companies have that combination and that equation within themselves, they can blast through 10-foot concrete walls.
Mhm.
And I think that's something that we have lost in our culture, Tim. And I think we've
Mhm.
lost it for a really strange reason. And I think it's because we live in a very wealthy economy, and with
Mhm.
wealth brings independence, and we're deceived in a lot of ways, but with wealth brings independence, corruption. So if I was to give you one thing that I think that our culture has eroded, it's been from the delusion of wealth. Okay. And if we get back on track, which I think we're going to talk more about that, but if we get back on track with our principles of wealth, I think God shows up in ways that I don't think God is showing up in ways that He would want to, because we aren't living our lifestyle in a way that glorifies
Mhm.
Him.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe hopping back to where you started, I would have a follow-up question, like this trust and being able to have the difficult conversations, saying the truth. Do you have any practical tips for someone who needs to have a hard conversation with a business partner or teammate or somebody like that? How do you approach a difficult conversation? Just some
This is
practical
good
tips.
because Tim and Titus are business partners.
I was
So
like, oh boy, what's coming my way? Wow.
There we go.
Tell him to be easy on me.
Yeah. Well, I believe meaningful conversation is always anchored in great documentation. And I think one of the challenges in business is when we haven't documented and to reinforce what we're trying to communicate with the people we serve. So, on that note, I would just say relationships that aren't anchored in good documentation oftentimes breed misunderstanding. And the challenge we face is that we have what we say is left up for interpretation for as many people as are in the room. So when you put something on paper, you change the game. When somebody took the time to document something, um, it communicates 10 times more than what you say. In fact, I'm sure you're familiar with that verse in the Bible. It talks about the foolishness of preaching. I don't think that's the foolishness of the people you're preaching to. I think it's the foolishness of the preacher. When the preacher's foolish enough to think that he can say it one time and everybody should hear what he said, that is absolutely ludicrous. In fact, I'll tell you, and I believe that leadership is repeatership. And until you've repeated that over and over again, at some point people will wake up and say, "Oh my goodness, he actually means what he says." But if you want to short circuit that, you articulate it on paper and you have a more meaningful conversation around the paper instead of you. Anytime the focus is on you, has the chances to go off the rails and be emotional. Anytime you're willing to shift that, and then if you want to make that scream, nail it to the wall. Okay. And by the way, make it bigger than 8.5 by 11, because that means all you had to do is push print. The other one means you had to take a trip to Staples and make it 2 feet by 4 feet. So, and if you even want to make it even scream even more, you laminate it. Okay. And then if you want to take it the next level, you frame it. Okay. So the point I'm making is if the more we take the time to invest in the statement, the louder it becomes. Now, there was a man in history that did this, and he was genius. Do you know who it was?
Martin Luther.
Yep. And this guy was brilliant. He not only put it on the wall, but he nailed it to the door of God's house. That is crazy. Why don't you try that next Sunday? Nail it to the most important building in your community and see if you get any attention. Well, most of them are glass now, so you'll have to use Scotch tape. But, you know, there's two aspects of leadership. Leadership is about killing drama, and in the culture side of leadership, and well, it can also be in the financial side, and we can talk more about that as far as sharing your numbers. But it takes a leader with guts to drill down and kill it. And we as human beings tend to live in the peripheral, which is not the issue, it's the peripheral. And the leader's role is to drill down and hit the core issues and deal with root cause. I'm sure you're familiar with root cause analysis. So what should be the closing thought for Tim and Titus? I don't believe in 50-50 partnerships.
Oh boy.
Oh,
I believe that is a pipe dream. And the reason why 50-50 partnerships, by the way, I was in a 1/3 partnership, which is called death. But the reason why equal
wow.
partnerships don't work is not in the first generation where you're blood and brothers. That's not the problem. The problem is in the second generation. The minute you guys got married, you invited someone outside of your blood relationship. So now the relationship takes on a new dynamic. It's called the wife interpretation. So then the second level of liability is when you have kids. You guys both look like you're old enough to have kids. So when the kids get old enough to get in the business, then you add the third dynamic, because your wife tells you got to take your kids to work and got to take your kids and put them to work. Now, that's a little different when it's in the farm than it's in the business, but it's very similar. And then it really just goes off the rails when they get married, because so there's a lot of work. I actually find myself in a lot of those situations where I'm trying to bring some closure to family businesses.
Well, it looks like our
Sounds
only
like a bright
option is
future.
our only option is to sell Joe some shares, which he's been wanting. So
Right.
Another family
You
member.
could be really creative with that.
yeah. Well, I do want to get to generosity, but I wanted to talk about before we get there, and then maybe this will lead into generosity. Like what generally motivates business owners? And I've been thinking about this with Tim and I's partnership. I think Tim is more motivated by like growing a big organization and leading it, and that kind of gives him the buzz. I'm more motivated by money. And different business owners are just motivated by different things. But I think that the primary motivations for most business owners, and I'd love for you guys to correct me if I'm wrong, but I think one of the biggest ones is building equity. So if you own a business, you can build equity in that company if it's sellable, which increases your net worth. And then also the opportunity to drive profitability. So if you can have a profitable company, you can take distributions from that. And then thirdly, the opportunity to build a large organization everyone kind of likes to build something in the world. So being able to build something that you own, that you can kind of shape, and something that's serving clients and giving people employment opportunities, that's also exciting and motivating. So are all of these valid motivations? So the first two have more to do with money. The third has more to do with power, I guess. Um, are these the things that should motivate business leaders? Because it almost seems inevitable that these, on some level, are going to be the motivating factor to like grow your organization, make it successful. Um, or are these corrupt and fleshly?
Come on, Titus, you can corrupt anything.
Tried to use intense words there.
That was great. Well, no, I think they're great. I think you kind of boiled it down, and I think you did a good job of it. Yeah, so I kind of boil everything down to three things. That way I can remember it. But I believe there's dreamers, builders, and then there's contributors. Um, the dreamer tends to constantly be dreaming, and so he doesn't take, the one dream and put focus on it to get the results. And he medicates by dreaming. So anytime he faces a challenge, he starts dreaming again. That's why he medicates. Then the builder is the plotter. He's the guy that will stick at it and he's very focused. And the contributor is the person that wants to contribute to someone's dream or what they're building. And you need more contributors than you need builders and dreamers, of course. So first of all, I'd like to kind of create those categories. Now, going back to your first question, building equity, of course, we talked about net profit. If you don't have net profit, you can't build your culture. So you said building, how'd you say that? The opportunity to drive profitability,
Right.
so that owners can take
So you can take
distribution.
distributions or you can pay yourself well. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's where you ask a question about where businesses may fail, and I think that's one area when you only see the owners taking distributions and not the employees. And I think it's extremely biblical to share your increase. I think I could give you some Bible verses to reinforce that, but I think the generosity comes in uh, when we start sharing our increase with the people that helped us do it. Um, get to that point. So
What
when we,
percent?
yeah, that's another good question. So I think it has to. I guess I would kind of go biblical on you again. Um, I think the minimum should be 10% that you should share that.
And profit
Uh,
sharing to employees.
yeah, 10% of your net profit. Now think about it. Your net profit, it does not include your capital expenses. Capital expenses are a decision made by the owner. That's part of ownership, is deciding when you make capital expenses. But the net profit is what all the employees contribute to. I'm going to just say everything you do communicates. Everything. When you're in leadership, the way you walk into the business communicates something. The way you show up communicates something. Your expressions communicate something. Your words communicate something. Be careful with the words you use, because everything you say as the leader, take it times 10. And if you don't believe me, just think about how people twist what you say.
Yeah,
To
there's no pressure, you know. It's
Hey, leadership is not for the weak at heart, and it certainly isn't for wusses. Um, anyway, I would just say that's why you have to anchor everything into a vision, mission, and values, and get really clear with that and nail it on the wall so you can constantly refer to that. Then you also mentioned about growing organizations and which is more honorable, to grow the organization or there's where the magic comes. The magic comes when you bring all that together and you can do it in such a way that honors God, and people actually observe that. I would encourage you to read Philippians. When that happens, something really special happens. This is when we really model for people what it looks like in Christ's kingdom. When everybody has a voice, and I think you can run a business in that way. Now, one of our values in business was great lives for great people. Now, I want you to tell you another thing in business is how you flip the script. Do you think we wanted to have people that weren't great? So we had to define what great people look like and what a hero looked like in every position because everybody wants to be in Hebrews 11. So you need to define what a hero looks like in your company and in the role they fill. That way they know exactly what it looks like to contribute to this team at the highest level. In fact, in our service techs, they had a little card that was laminated onto their dash, and it was the definition of a technician hero. Now, do you think that may have given some importance to what they were trying to become every day on the job? Every door in our organization had a mirror on it. The door was actually a mirror. So when they left the building, we wanted them to look how they were going to show up on the job. We wanted them to think about what people see when they see them. We controlled how they looked. So try this in church, it doesn't work. Well, we controlled every piece of garment that they had, even the belt that they wore and the shoes they wore, because one of our taglines is we drive through storms. And because of that, we had to model that and what everything, even down to the way we look. So we wore tactical gear because we wanted the employees to feel different and we wanted our people to see something different.
Yeah. So what should be the ultimate motivation then for growing a company, would you say?
Well, I think the health score of any company is the two things. It's net profit and culture. So you have to create definition around what those two things look like for your company because that becomes your brand. So one of our brands was from the service culture piece was we had a 15-minute callback guarantee or your service was free. It has to cost you something if it's a guarantee. It can't be something that's relevant. Well, what a lot of people never knew was what all the things it took behind the scenes to deliver on that. And when we sold the company, by the way, that was posted on the door when you left as well, what the current score was on our callback guarantee, because that was our brand. So that all the disciplines that had to be put in place to pull that off took everybody. And it went totally down through the organization, but it was part of our brand. We were a company where we put our customers' needs first, and we drive through storms to make it happen.
So how do you, when you have a new initiative like that, how do you get buy-in in the company to pull something like that off? What's the process?
Oh, that's a great question, Joe. You're brilliant beyond your years. It's
I have
called
quite a few years now, you know.
it's called communication, and it's called reinforcement. And I just mentioned to you that leadership is repeatership. You have to find as many ways to say the same thing differently. So every day that you walk in the job, you got to think how you can reinforce that in a different way within your organization to communicate the importance of it. So what we do consistently and repeat often is what's important to us. So pick your battles.
So we talked already a fair amount about generosity, but I'm curious, and you recommend 10% of net profit going to profit sharing among employees. If any
Well, I
of our
don't necessarily recommend 10%. I think that's a starting point. We gave 20% of our net profit.
All right, setting the bar. But as far as charitable contributions in general, and maybe that's what you're referring to as radical generosity, but if the company has a goal of contributing to charity outside of profit sharing for employees, what do you think is a good benchmark? Should this also be a percentage of net profit, do you think? Or yeah, what do you recommend for, say, there is a company that's making great profits and the owner can choose to, either invest it back into the company or take it in owner's draws and live a bougie life, or give it away? Like how should that decision be made? What are the ways to faithfully make that decision as a business owner?
Man, that's a hard question to answer, Titus. I think it's different for everybody, and I think you need to know in your heart what is. I think we should give till it hurts, and to the point that we have to risk something, and that's actually a test of our faith, and also as a confirmation for us as individuals where our heart is. So, um, let me let me start out by saying this. We chose to give 10% to ministry, 10% of our net profit to ministry, and 20% to the employees. We wanted to model to them what giving felt like, the reward of giving. And so we also wanted to make possible for them to give personally. So we had an events around giving. So we wanted to reinforce that our business was in business to create great lives, both in ministry and personally. So, it probably would take too long here to talk about that topic alone. That could probably be a separate subject. I would just say that we created that 10% was an event. So we would have the ministries we support come in and talk to the employees. And we focused on making it the employee's decision instead of the owner's decision. We also we would break up the different departments and they would decide where they gave a certain percentage of that money. So it also brought them together as departments. So one of the things I feel like that was the most exciting part of business for me was giving people the power to be generous and showing them the reward of being generous. So they would go there. Part of the role, and I could share this with you, but part of the role was they would decide what ministry to give the money, and they'd also donate a day at that ministry so they could learn more about it and feel even better about their donation. And then the employees would give the check. So I was involved with one group. I would be part of sorting clothes or whatever it might have been, but actually, the ownership. So there's another key word here I'd like to just throw out, and that is employee ownership. So now that either Tim or Titus is maybe feeling a little, scared about this 50-50 thing, there's a way to create ownership that you can have ownership without having partnership. And I'm not a big partnership person. I'm a big ownership person. So think about it this way, Titus. If you're sharing the profits with your employees, they are a percentage they're to some degree an owner.
Right.
And so we used ownership as we never talked about it as an individual. I don't believe in rewarding individual performance. I believe in rewarding team performance if you want to be a team. Okay. So the way you reward the team performance is by sharing the profits. By the way, if you're sharing profits with someone that's a loser, whose fault is that?
The person who
So
hired, probably.
yeah, and so the interesting thing is the way this works is people self-select or the team fires them. Because why would you want a loser on your team that's burning through profit?
Mm-hmm.
But you have to communicate to your team on a quarterly basis. And here's where the tough part comes in. A lot of people don't want to be transparent about their financials. But when you're transparent about your financials, you build trust. And by the way, if you don't do that and you share profit, everybody thinks you're cooking the books anyway. What I can tell you is that when you're transparent about your numbers, people don't even understand it because that's why they're not in business in a lot of times. But there is certain people that do understand that the other people glaze over. Do you know there's only one number they look at? It's called the profit pool. And you run your whole business on focusing on their money instead of your money. And that's a huge shift in business.
So would you
So
show
guess
your
what?
whole company the P&L and balance sheet every month?
Absolutely not. They would get so dizzy they couldn't even think. The only thing, that's a department decision. All we would show would be 5 numbers. It would be your revenue, your gross profit, your cost of goods. I'm sorry, I put that in the wrong order, but it's your revenue, your cost of goods, your gross profit, your operating expense, and your net profit, and the profit pool. And by the way, you highlight that line because that's the only one they're looking at anyway. Now you have conversations about how we can make them more money or why they're losing money. All right. But it's their money and forget about your money. Okay. Um, we could talk on and on about that topic alone, but that is, you would ask about what, what I find small businesses are missing out on, and that's the rewards of being generous. By the way, when they own the business, they get extremely creative. And I can tell you stories about that because now it's their business.
You're making me a little uncomfortable, which is probably good. Tim and I will have to have some discussions after this. These
Yeah,
are
well, I can hook you up with a coach if you're interested.
Yeah, I mean, these are radical ideas. I mean, I feel like we run our company on some radical ideas as well. But yeah, you're definitely pushing it.
Well, I think Christians should be radical. And I
Right.
think that when we are radical, we communicate what, God is what's important. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Joe.
All right. So with this new hand raising thing, I can do this without interrupting, right?
Right.
So, I like what you shared there, Lyndon. How do you take some of those same principles and apply them to a nonprofit or we could call it, instead of calling it a nonprofit, a for impact organization? Um, yeah, because I love this kind of the concept behind employees being vested and feeling that ownership. So how do you transfer some of these same principles to a nonprofit where you don't really make a profit? You're there literally to, yeah, you've got a bottom line, but um, it's really different than a for-profit business, you know.
Well, um, first of all, I think that's stinking thinking, Joe. Um, the next question I'd ask is, how do you measure success at Open Hands?
By the impact.
And how do you measure the impact?
Some of it we can measure through the quantity of our work, and some of it through the quality of our work. The quality of our work is harder to measure than the quantity.
Why?
It's harder to put numbers to the quality.
Is that your fault or the people's fault?
So I know what the right answer is here, but I'm going to give another one. That this is great. Yeah, this is coaching here, coming out on the internet. But okay, so measuring the quality of your work through numbers, in in a nonprofit doing savings and credit groups, it just becomes really tough to put numbers to things like spiritual growth, um, like the quality of people's relationships who are in the savings groups. And so this is good. Now you can push back.
Well, let's just start with the only thing that we communicate in life is what we do consistently. Um, and I don't think you measure culture the same way as you do finances or numbers. I think numbers don't lie. We got to know our numbers in business, and I think that's what your business is, Titus and Tim, is to help people learn to know their numbers. Because a lot of the people that I would refer to you don't know their numbers, and because of that, not making the wisest decisions. So that's the easy one, by the way. That's the one that I don't coach much for numbers. I refer people to do that because I don't enjoy that as much because it's too simple. Um, what I enjoy doing, okay, so I'm tend to be attracted to messy. So the messier the situation, the better I look. Okay, because I create the highest level of improvement in that situation. So I think the most challenging is your culture, Joe, and I think you're onto something by what you're saying. But the point is you are the CEO of your organization, whether it's Pro Synergy or Open Hands. It really is no different. And here's where I think we also run into a problem. We hide in the fact that it's ministry, and that again is ridiculous. I think you can measure the health of a culture, any culture, but I think the measurement starts with you. You define the measurement of your culture. And again, this is a topic that could take another 45 minutes. So I don't want to take advantage of the time here, but
Well, we'll have another session and invite you back if you're willing sometime.
I'll just give you a key word. It's called behaviors. And that's a whole nother topic, just like generosity is, or profit share is, or ownership, or the delusion of partnership, or whatever you want to call it. Those are all individual topics, and they need to be unpacked. But I would just say, Joe, if you're not spending time and you're not reinforcing every day as the CEO what the measurement of your culture looks like, and what you and how you measure that. Remember, we had a 15-minute callback guarantee. What did we communicate to every employee about 15-minute callback guarantee? It meant that responding to our customers was the number one priority. We would get back to them within 15 minutes or it cost us our tail. And so that little message was weaved into every aspect of our company.
Yeah. Well, we should wrap this up. We will have to do a part 2 sometime soon, but this was fantastic. Thanks, Lyndon, for coming on the podcast. If people want to find more of your resources, we will put the link in your website in the description. And you have a conference coming up in April, right?
Yeah, every April and every October, we have a leadership conference. It's limited to 50 people. It sells out before the next event. So April's already sold out.
Mm.
So if you want to attend, you would need to register for October, and you probably should register within the next month.
Okay. Yeah, we'll put the link for that as well in the show notes. Everyone can go check it out. Thanks a lot for your time, Lyndon.
You bet. Great seeing you guys.